fulfilled. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I do think that what you do in a run of a day dictates what's in your heart. I think that's true. That's really, really scary, but it is true. Your passion comes from your activities. You may feel like you're a slave to certain things that you do in life, but that is still your passion. You're spending the majority of your time doing worldly things. Your passion is actually for the world and not for God. And we're going to find out how that plays out. I've given everybody a questionnaire. And inside that questionnaire, we're going to ask some crucial questions. The very first thing that we spend most of our time at for our daily activity is usually we spend an awful lot of time at work. I think that's the number one thing that we work at. And when you look at it, we spend about 8 hours, according to statistics, doing nothing but working. Now, that's paid work. So if you go to your sheets, I want you to fill out on the survey, take your pencil. There's 3 different questions related to work. First one, how much time do you spend at paid work? Now, if you work 40 hours a week, you got to divide that by 7. I'll make it easy for you. 40 hours equates to 6 hours a day, on average. If you work 50 hours, then, well, you're up to 7 hours per day, on average. If you're higher than that, like some of us, then you're up a little bit more. You're up to 8, 9, or 10 hours a day. That's the first one I want to put in. The second one is, how much time do you spend driving back and forth to work? For some people, that's not an issue. You live right beside where you work, not a problem. For other people, it'll be up to half an hour. If it's half an hour to get there, half an hour to get back, put in about a quarter of an hour per day, per week. How much time do you spend cleaning the house? I'm sure that's high up there. How much time do you spend getting everything done? I'm not just talking cleaning the house. I'm talking about anything you've got to do to the house. The yard, the backyard, fixing up your home, everything is underneath that housework. And add up those totals. That's a chunk, according to statistics, says about 33% of our time is spent on work and work-related activities. The second category. And this one here represents 43% of our time, and that's personal activities. That's taking care of ourselves. So there's some questions I want to ask you. I want you to put in some hours tonight. How much time do you spend sleeping? Now, according to the statistics, it's 8 hours on average for most people. However, a lot of people sleep less than that, 5 hours, 6 hours, 3 hours, and some sleep more, 9, 10, 11, 12 hours per day. Put down what you normally sleep per day, on average. Don't pick the anomaly where you did an all-nighter, but the average. How much time do you spend eating? That's how much time did you spend getting your food ready, and how much time do you spend with your family actually eating? How many hours per day? 3 meals a day, or 2, whatever your case might be. And how much time do you spend on personal hygiene? How much time do you spend on that? That's bathing, washing, making yourself look halfway decent. How many hours do you spend on that?
20 seconds.
Now, for the second part I want to look at is our leisure time. And how much time do we spend on our leisure time in the run of a day? That's how much time you have left over. It's a little bit scary that we actually do have 5.5 hours. Hard to believe that that's our free time, but it is, and we can fill it with anything that we want to. Doesn't take us much to fill the 5.5 hours. So I got some questions in here that cover some of those hours. For instance, how much time do you spend with your family? That's events that you actually go to. So if you go to Carolyn's for dinner today, and you're part of the family, that's considered a family outing. How much time do you spend doing that per day? Here's a big one. How much time do you spend watching television? That's a huge one. Actually, TV, they say, runs on average about 3 hours per day for most people. On average. You got to add up your nights. If you spend 2 hours a night, let's say, watching TV, but don't forget your weekends, because people watch more TV on weekends than they do the weeknights. Add them all up, divide them by 7. If you do 20 hours a week, that's 3 hours per day. Most people are around that amount. How much time do you spend reading? Some people read. Not all, but some do. How many hours per day? And the last one is, how much time do you spend playing video games?
There's a difference.
Don't be surprised if you're an adult and you have to put down some hours for video games, because guess what? The games are getting more complicated every day, and more adults actually do play video games. It's becoming quite natural, normal. So put down the amount of hours there. I want you to take the three categories, and I want you to ask yourself, add them up, those three categories. How many hours have you got in those three categories? How many hours do you have?
I don't got that sheet.
You don't have that sheet? You've got some more up here. Okay, once you've got that added up, then I want you to go to God's time. Now, I want to start off first by saying this category, don't be surprised if it's a very, very low number, and don't feel bad about it. The reality is that when you go do the surveys out in any kind of survey that's done in relation to this, you find that number is going to be very close to 0, or maybe even possibly a 1. So don't be surprised if I start asking questions, you've got to say 0. That's normal, that's very natural. How much time do you spend at church? Now, when you think about it, if you're here for Sunday school and church, there's 3 hours. If you come to church at night, there's 2 more, you're up to 5 hours. And if you're on the worship team, you got a couple more hours. You probably made it to your 7. Divide that by 7, that's 1 hour per day. That would be natural. That would be normal. You get 1. You may be less than 1. A lot of people are less than 1 hour. So how much time at church? How much time do you spend reading the Bible? There's a tough one. Per day. Don't take the anomaly where you actually sat down and read it for the very first time. Take on average how much you spend. Don't be surprised if that's 0. That's fine. Majority of the people, that will be 0. So don't feel bad about it. How much time do you spend praying? That's a tough one. How many minutes of a day do you pray? You pray when you get up, you pray when you go to bed. How many minutes do you spend? If you spend about 15 minutes a day, a quarter of an hour. That's how much you put down. Or half an hour. Or a whole hour. Depends on the person. And finally, how much time do you spend on devotions? That's a little bit different than reading the Bible, because that means you're going to meditate on what you read. That means you're going to study it really hard. So how many hours do you spend doing devotions? Again, don't be surprised if that's a 0. Majority of the people, it is. I want you to add those up. And for the majority of the people, you're going to find that there's no more than an hour in that category. If you take 1 hour and divide that through by 24, you get about 3%. About 3% of our time, we consider that to be very natural. So if I start out first with work, and say I put in my work time. I can envision you making a mess. So if that's your work time, Debbie's going to get after me after a minute. I can see it already.
You're proving yourself, I say.
Yeah. All right. That's about 1/3 of your time that you spend. There's your work right there. We'll say that's about 1/3. And then if you add in on top of that, this is kind of a little bit bigger time. This is your personal time that you take care of yourself with, sleeping. I'm going to have to apologize to Debbie after this. All big time. And then if you add on top of that, your time that you just kind of is yours and you do whatever you feel like. You put that in. That's probably what most people's lives look like. That's probably pretty much it. It's filled right to the brim. And there really isn't a whole lot of time left over to do much of anything else. So when God comes along and asks you, would you go do something for me? Usually the answer is absolutely no, I can't do it. Because if God says, I want you to do a service for me, you're going to say, no, well, I can't fit God into my life. There's nothing left. My life is completely full. You know, in a lot of cases, we as Christians, we say that. It's kind of scary when you think about it. 1 hour per week, or per day, you spend with God. That's the average. That means that people out in the world and people in the church believe if you spend 1 hour per day, you're actually healthy, spiritually. You're actually considered a very good church-going, spiritually mature individual. That's what most people believe. 1 hour. 3% of your time, everybody's told us that is good. If you do 2 hours, everybody thinks you're Bible thumping. They think you're absolutely crazy. They start asking all sorts of questions like, why are you always at church when you get up around 7 or 8 or 9% of your time? But is that the way God intends it? I don't believe so. I don't think that's the way that we are supposed to be. When I look into Scriptures, it does say the good a person brings out really comes from the good stored within their heart, and the evil a person brings out really comes from the evil things stored within your heart. When I go into some more Scriptures, I find really we're dead inside to a certain extent, because if we don't show any deeds from our faith, then what are we doing? And it says in James, the body without